Hi, BWW community. It's Michelle Jackson again with the book of the week. And this week's book is by my friend Brian Evans. It's called The S.P.E.A.R Paradigm. And I am so excited to be here with Brian to talk about his book. Wow, I will say this. I was reading a best-selling novel, not a novel, I'm sorry, a memoir, and I could not get into it. So I put it down and I picked up your book. And I started to read it. And the first thing that came over me was that you wrote this book for me. Now,
Oh
I
wow.
haven't seen you since
Yeah,
1992,
way back.
but but when I read it, I connected so much, so well
Wow.
with this book because it's all about encountering God. And
Mm,
so tell us about yourself, tell us about the book, and let's kind of dig deep because today, with everything that's happening in the world, from COVID to the injustices that's taken place
yeah.
around the death of George Floyd, I think it's important that we talk about the idea of how do we build a relationship with Christ? How do we maintain that relationship? Because
Mm,
a lot of people are struggling with mental illness right now, mental health, they're
yes.
stressed. A lot of people are out of work. A lot of people are unfortunately having a very, very tough time understanding these injustices that we continue to have to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, so, like I said, when I read your book, I felt so connected to it.
Mm,
And that's a big thing because as a writer, you want your readers to be connected. You want them to
yes.
feel what you were feeling when you wrote it. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to learn more about you,
Mm.
what's been going on in your life, learn about the book, and then let's kind of dig into this S.P.E.A.R paradigm, which is so important for us all at this time.
Absolutely. Thank you. So first of all, let me just say thank you, Michelle, for just doing what you're doing because it is such an important work and such an important platform, that you're building. And as an author and just as an African American, just in general, I so just give you props for what you're doing here in BWW and giving us authors a platform that was so that we can come together and just kind of share our
Mhm.
knowledge, our work, and just learn from each other. So kudos to you. I'm so privileged to actually be part of the community, first of all, and also be spotlighted, as the book of the week or the month or
Well,
yeah.
I want to go back and say this. You were the first book of the week. You were
I got
booked
you.
week one,
Okay.
book of the week. But I went on live by myself to talk about your book. And then the next week, I decided to start hosting these interviews. And I'm like, wait a minute, I got to go back
Right.
and do Brian because your book is the book that really made me want to do this.
Oh wow.
And so it was just like I've got to bring him into this because this is a conversation that needs to be had. So I just want to say this is kind of a take two for you.
Awesome.
You are the first book of the week. So
Awesome. Love
congratulations.
you. Well, thank you so much. It is definitely a privilege. So a little bit about me. I am a native of Birmingham, Fairfield, Alabama, and living now in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Been here for coming up to about 8 years now in July, which is incredible because it doesn't seem like that long, but it's been almost 8 years that I've been here. So I'm loving Charlotte. Really do love, the city and the feel of the people. Even during this real tumultuous, chaotic time right now. We have the riots and a lot of the looting and stuff going on here as well. But I think, and we'll probably talk about that and touch on that later on, as part of our conversation. But I think that's just an expression, of and a reflection of what has been going on for so many years. And we've just been looking for an outlet to express our rage, our sorrow, our hurt, disappointment. So that's I have a whole philosophy on on that I won't get into, but yeah, we're here and we're really loving the city. I work as a manager at one of the main healthcare organizations here, and I manage a training team. So I am currently in school, working on my master's degree in pastoral counseling. So I have about another year or so to go on that. So it's been very interesting, trying to juggle all of these things. And then just got crazy enough to decide to write a book, which it still blows my mind that I'm an author. But for me, I think the part that really blows my mind the most is that people actually connect so well with the book. And it really just speaks volumes to the fact that when God has called you to a place, and when he has brought you through a certain journey, and when you've walked a certain path, you're never alone on that path. You're never alone in that journey. And a lot of times God really does come full circle and allows us to really see and connect with other travelers, on the same journey. And you may not be side by side, and a lot of times you might feel like you're alone, on that journey. But God always allows us to connect with each other in some way, to show us that the fight that we're in, the things that we've gone through, it has not been exclusive to us. It's just not our personal story. We have a variation of a bigger story to tell. So I think this book proves to me how big God is, and how intentional he is about the purpose and the design that he has for each one of us, and how we're all interconnected with that one huge purpose that God has in his providence, So I think for me, this book is, first of all, just my story, and what I've done and what I've learned as a result of just trying to survive and just being in the moment of just connecting to God and learning how to really connect to other people. So that's where the S.P.E.A.R paradigm was birthed. And the S.P.E.A.R is basically an acronym, and we kind of talked about this before before launching the Zoom, that I love acronyms. In healthcare, that's all we really deal with, acronyms. So one of the things that really came, from my prayer time and my meditation was this acronym, and it's basically just 5 steps that I walk through on a daily basis to really maintain my spiritual health and intimacy with God. And I've, kind of like talked to so many different people and have really just, had conversations with so many different people that struggle with, prayer and intimacy with God, and building that relationship with God, and the question that I get so often is, where do I begin? How do I even start praying to a God that I can't see, and connecting to a God that feels so far away, So my answer to that question is this book. This is literally what I do. So I just break down those steps with the S, the P, the E, the A, and the R.
So tell me, with the S, we're going to spend time with God.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And, when I say that I feel like this book was written for me, I say that because, wow, as a reader, you want to connect at that level.
Yeah. Yes.
With what you read. But I believe that as a writer, as anyone with a talent, okay, that God is constantly moving you to walk in that talent.
Yes.
And whether you're a dancer, a writer, a singer, whether your talent is to mentor, to counsel, to preach, whatever that talent is, God kind of he drags you to the well sometimes because we fight him so much on wanting to put that talent out there
Yes.
because it's very, very, very difficult. And what I had to learn in my own writing experience is that, you know, the writing is partly for me to express myself
Mm-hmm.
and partly for the reader, because there is some reader that's going to read what you write and be moved. And
Mm-hmm.
even if it's one person,
Mm-hmm.
you've hit the goal.
Right.
You struck gold in this.
Yes.
And that's how I felt. I felt like when I read it, I said, "You wrote this for me. I'm the one person that God wanted you to write it for." Because
That's
several
awesome.
years ago, my husband and I lived in Atlanta, and we took a Bible study course, and it was over about, it was maybe 6 to 9 months, and it was all about spending time with God. It was about
Yes.
connecting with Him. We would go into a room at the church and pray for 3 hours.
Wow.
We learned how to, you know, really develop that quiet time every day, spending time hearing Him, letting Him talk to us, and being able to move and to operate in that. But in all the things that I was doing in my life, my running my business and a nonprofit and writing, I kind of got away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when I picked your book up, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This right here, I'm reading it and I'm like, wait, wow.
Yeah.
This is just what I needed to remind myself
Wow.
that
That's,
the most important thing I need in my life is to have a relationship with God. The most.
yes.
Not money,
Yes.
not, you know, notoriety or fame or success,
Mm-hmm.
but I need that relationship with God. He helps me to get through the hard days, you know,
Yeah.
the COVIDs, all these things that are happening around us. He's what's going to build that fence to protect me. And so that's why I said it was for me, because I didn't pick it up to be moved. I picked it up because I'm like, well, let me see what's going on with Brian. And in the midst of that, I got what I really believe the reason why you wrote it. So my question to you then is, and this is something that's been on my mind since I read your book. Tell me about the moment you decided to write it.
Wow. Yeah. So, man, I think the moment that I decided to actually put it in book form was a little bit different from the moment that I decided to actually start writing, like the concept, if that makes sense. So, just to kind of give you a little bit of background, this book started as a prayer journal, my own personal prayer journal. So I am twice divorced, and this is me. So one thing you got to learn about me, I'm transparent, full transparency. So I come out of the gate like that, and I don't want to shock everybody, but you know, I think for me, it's like transparency for me is a balm. It's a healing salve.
Yes.
So I really kind of feel like it not only is healing for me when I tell my story, but it's also, you know, healing for others who hear the story. So twice divorced, and really just kind of going through, as I wrote in my book, just really a very difficult time being disconnected from God, willingly just walking away from Him, just simply because I really felt like, you know, out of everything that I had endured and experienced in my life, that God somehow was not fair. And it was very difficult for me to wrap my mind around how God can be, first of all, as good as everybody's saying that He is. He's a good God. Yeah. If He's so good, why are all these terrible things happening to me? You know? And also, if He's so powerful, if He is God, where is He? So these are the questions that I literally had to just kind of deal with and wrestle with before writing this book. Well, you have to be careful what you ask for, because, you know, it's like God has a tendency to answer those questions. And a lot of times those answers don't come in the way that we would like them to come in the moment that we're asking them. Sometimes there has to be time and distance, you know, between those the question and the answer. And that distance between the question and the answer is the journey that is required to really understand the answer when it comes and when it shows up. So this book was birthed out of me trying to really just journal as part of my healing process.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I noticed as I was journaling one morning in prayer, as I was spending time with God, it was a point where I was just kind of journaling, and it was like I just knew. It was just this knowing. And I wish I had like some kind of deep, story to say at this moment somebody came to me and said, you need to write a book, and
Mm-hmm.
don't have that.
Like
It
I
was
said.
just this knowing
Mm-hmm.
that the contents of this journal, someone needs to know this infrastructure, this information. They need to know these steps to get
Mm-hmm.
to me. And I really felt like I heard the call of God say, I want people to know how to get to me using what you've used and using what I've given you. And that's the moment where I actually started thinking of my prayer journal
Mm-hmm.
as, man, this could actually be a book. Never wrote a book, didn't know the process, had no clue, but it was basically just kind of like a leap of faith
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of start writing, thinking that, okay, I'm writing a book. So it was like I was writing by faith, so to speak, Yeah.
I when it's a calling, it is a faith
Yeah.
walk. When I wrote my first book, a novel, I never written a novel before, never wrote
Right.
anything that required quotations, like
Mhm.
dialogue. And
Yeah.
so I wrote the book, having a bad day at work, and started writing about this character. And I looked up, a couple of months later to a year later, and I had 75,000 words. And I remember thinking, wait
Yeah,
a
that's
minute,
incredible.
I've done all of this, really? And it was just like, it was so meant to happen, and it needed to happen. And I went through a phase of being afraid to get it published because, like you, I was like, I just did this. Like, where did this come from? How did
Right.
this happen? And
Yes.
it had, of course, it was a Christian novel, and I was just, I got afraid. I became very afraid to publish it. And I remember watching Joel Osteen. He
Hmm.
was saying how his wife always wanted to be a children's book writer, and the 9-year-old walked in the room one day, and she was saying, she wasn't doing it at the time, and then her 9-year-old walked in the room and kind of questioned her about, Mom,
Yeah.
why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you writing these books? And she
Mhm.
decided, you know what, that's all I need. I need that push, and that gave me a
Yes.
push, and I
Yeah.
was like, let's do it. And so,
Mhm.
in the second book I wrote, took me 8 years, but it was
Mhm.
a very tough process,
Mhm.
because when you're writing something, you are pouring out so much of yourself, whether it's a novel or self-help or
Yeah.
spiritual growth. You're pouring out so much of yourself into it,
Mhm.
and it's so personal in many ways. And this book that I wrote, both of my books started out with a person trying to commit suicide.
Mm.
And it's so interesting that I would start books that way, but to me, I like to take a character from their lowest place to their
Mhm.
highest place,
I love it.
and
I
then
love
see
it.
God, how He moves. And I never take my characters into church. Like, they're not that type of. They're just people struggling like we're struggling,
Mhm.
and it's not I walked down the aisle of the church and found God and my life changed. It's more
Yeah.
of, I found, God is working on me.
Yeah.
That's how I like to build my characters, because that's how I see myself. God is constantly working on me. No,
Yeah.
no perfection here.
No.
So
No.
that's why when I read your book, I connected with it. I felt like, I got to know you better,
Mm.
but I also got to understand that, God's just working on all of us. He is just
Yes.
giving us all these different tools, but you
Mhm.
have to use them.
Yes.
And when you talked about kind of going through that period of not believing in God, I just thought, wow,
Yeah.
that is so honest and
Mm.
so great,
Yeah.
because so many of us go through that. You know, we
Absolutely.
really do.
Yeah.
We go through it. We go, look
Mhm.
at our lives. It's something that's not right.
Yeah.
Is he here? Is he listening? Um,
Mhm.
I can remember saying to God, I always say this, God, don't forget.
Yeah.
Like, that's always something in my head, God, don't forget me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to just ask that question about that moment because although it, maybe, it wasn't a rainbow that came out, across the sky
It
and,
wasn't, no.
Something, or
Yeah.
somebody knocked on the door and said something profound. I don't know, but
Right.
there is so much, importance to understanding that moment because we all have that moment.
That's true.
I had a friend, like I said, I was struggling with my first book of Put It Out There, and I heard the Joel Osteen conversation, and that helped. But then I had a girlfriend who called me out the blue and said, I had a dream that you wrote a book. Just like that.
Wow.
She didn't know I was writing a book. And that kind of scared me a little bit
amazing.
too.
Yeah.
And that was my time to say to her, I said, I wrote a book and I haven't gotten it published. She said, well, I had a dream that you wrote a book. And it was just like, okay, God.
That's what you need
Me.
right there. Yes.
It was one of those things. But, I love this book. I think that, this is why it's the book of the week. The first book. First book of the week. I want to say that because you're so honest and you're so pure-hearted in this book. You talk about the good, you talk about the bad, and that's what you have to do to get to a good place, especially in your walk with Christ.
Yes.
And so that is very, very important. So let's talk about the publishing process, though. I mean, how did you publish your book? How did you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. So now this is where I guess if I had to say, I actually saw the hand of God, almost kind of like your friend calling you, asking you about your book. This is where I would pinpoint and kind of trace like the hand of God in this whole process. Because like I said, going back to, me being a new author, I had no clue where to even begin. I just knew that it was going to be hard because that's all I heard people say about writing books. It's difficult. So I was prepared to really kind of face that challenge, whatever that looked like, to get the work out. Because I really believe that it was going to really touch people's lives and really help people. So I was prepared to walk through that whole submitting, your manuscript and getting rejected 12 times and going through that whole process before anybody picked up your book. But as I started writing, a couple that I was actually going to church with, they had a print company. And then the wife decided, you know what? She's a writer. So she just decided, I'm going to start my own publishing company. And she did that, and she got it off the ground, and she, kind of built up her author base, with a few authors and everything. And, I was talking to her, one day, and it came up, in conversation, what they had done. And I was like, whoa. I was like, so you're not going to believe this, but I'm in the process now of writing a book. And I have no idea where to start or where to go after I'm done. I don't know what the process is. So, at that point, I really felt like God was connecting us, for that time, for them. And we still keep in touch to this day. They're a phenomenal couple, amazing people. So I asked her, about the process, and she, just took me under her wing and really showed me that process. So for me, the hardest part was really writing the actual book, because for me, I went through the writing process was pretty arduous. It was a lot of I guess a lot of warfare around that process. Just with me mentally, emotionally, the things that I was going through in my life at the time. And as a matter of fact, the book that you're holding up now, the finished product, is not the original book that started out. I actually had to go back and literally start all over. I wrote the first manuscript, and I was kind of almost done with it, you know, and I was like, you know how they say when you're writing, go ahead and write everything out and kind of go through and then just put the book away and don't read it for a while and then come back to it and just kind of see what needs to change. So I did that. But when I put the book away, I ended up putting it away for like 3 years and never came back to it. And within that 3-year time frame, I went through a pretty nasty divorce. So a lot of the content that was in that first manuscript was totally obsolete. It was totally like just didn't even apply to my life anymore. I was like, if I read this or actually, you know, publish this now, it would be irrelevant, you know, to where I am. So I think that that time frame of me just kind of putting the book on the shelf and just letting it sit was purpose within itself.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah.
Coming back to that, yeah. So
I can see that. I went through the same thing. So I wrote my book after my first book came out in 2010. I wrote the second one by 2013. It was first person, and I sent it to my editor, and it was an angry book. You know, it was a very angry book. It was, and I think about how it was going. I had a whole idea of the direction it was going in. It went in a totally different direction. And it was angry. And she said it. She was like, hey, I don't know what's going on with you. This is pretty angry. And so I took it and I turned it into a third person. And when you have, you know, 80,000 words and you've got to change all of that. I mean, it was like starting over.
Yes.
But I knew it's the thing about writing that is so funny is that, so I haven't become this best-selling author and I'm not rich from writing.
Not yet.
I'm not rich. But you still have this passion to do it on top of your work, on top of your life. It's almost like, I mean, I would wake up in the morning tortured by the fact that I hadn't got my book out. And I was sitting there like, and I would say to myself, well, Michelle, what you doing this for? Nobody's writing a book. Nobody's sitting around here going, when is that? I mean, I used to have people ask me after my first book, when are you going to write your second one? I'm like, oh, it'll be out. Like, you know, 7 years later, nobody's asking about the second book.
Exactly.
They forgot you even wrote the book, the first one. You have to remind them. You're like, hey, you wrote something. And so, but I'm still tortured. I am like, you know, get it out. You got to get it out. Keep writing, keep writing. And and it's a painful, it's a painfully beautiful experience. And that's why we're doing this BWW page, is because it's such a wonderful experience to write. And you want to share it and you want to inspire people to do it, to continue to do it. And you know, I'm a big believer in the arts. I believe this is the process for everybody. I think that, you know, when a singer writes a song, it's this hard. When a dancer choreographs a dance, it's this hard. It is the process of birthing something that is you know, beautiful into the world. When you birth something beautiful into the world, it goes through a painful process. And I think, you know, for me, that's exactly it. And I can remember saying, will anybody read this? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know, but I wrote it, and I'm praying that people will read it and get it. And when they do read it and get it, you know, it's a powerful thing. I remember the first book club event I went to when I wrote my first book. First time I've been in front of potential readers, and I walk in this room with all these older women, and they all have my book in their hands, so my heart drops because I'm sure they are about to give it to me. You know how you know, nobody's smiling, nobody's like, oh, there's the author. They all look at me like, you know. And so I sit down and I'm nervous and I'm bracing myself for the negativity. I really am. I'm bracing myself for someone to say, well, I saw a misspelled word on this page, and this happened on this page. You know how that is.
My gosh.
That's a whole nother segment. You know, you write 100,000 words and you misspell one, and it's like you're done. So, and I was waiting for it. And I remember this lady, she had my book and it had like 1 million little sticky notes in it.
Wow.
So, you know,
that's a
hard.
Good sign.
It's like,
good sign or bad sign.
Like, she coming for me. She coming for me. And I mean, she sat there And they introduced me, and like I said, nobody's excited to see me. And so then she pulls her book out and she starts to dissect everything. She said, when you wrote this, you were going through this. When you created this character, where you did, I mean, this lady has sat, read that book, and she was just knocking it down until tears welled up in my eyes, because I'm like, oh my, you know, this is impactful. You know, everybody's not going to like your work. Everybody's not going to get it. But when you have that person who says, you know, I felt that, I understood that, I learned from something that you went through, it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. So I want to tell you that I had that feeling.
Thank you so
and
much.
I think that you should write, continue to write, but don't lose this. Don't lose that authentic voice.
Okay.
Don't lose that honesty, because you had some good, I mean, you brought up some of these stories and some of the things that you added. I was like, yeah, that's my friend from Fairfield. So it was really good, and I'm just proud to know you, proud to see your work, proud to know that you've gone through and done this, and I'm glad that you had a great experience publishing. I mean, I have no, you know, it's editing is hard, the hard part, you know, because you keep reading it and you read it and you read it, and you probably do too much of that. And I'm glad to hear you say somebody told you to sit down and walk away, because I didn't walk away for a while, and it drives you crazy. So, but the rest of it has been a good experience, and that's one of the things I like to talk to the writers about, is your publishing experience, because a lot of people aren't publishing because they're afraid of what's going to happen. It's going to be hard. Am I going to be told no? Now with self-publishing and the fact, you know, like friends like yours who are creating publishing companies, and I know a lot of people doing that as well. It's a lot easier, and don't be afraid of it. But if God is telling you to put that work out, put it out.
Start on it as soon as possible, because every day you realize, once you actually get into the writing process, you realize that time is just ticking away, you know. And the longer you delay, then the longer it's going to be, you know, before you get that work out, you know. Because writing is a process. And it is a process that that has, you know, in some elements. I heard Tanahashi Coates. I know you know him. He's an incredible author. He was talking one day about the writing process and how agonizing it is, and he said something that really spoke to me. He said, if you're a writer and the writing process is not agonizing to you, then more than likely you're not a writer. More than likely, you probably should be doing something else. He said, because the process of saying and trying to write what you are hearing and what you're feeling, and once you actually do put it on paper, the process of going back and trying to perfect it, you know, line by line, he was like, it's just an agonizing, grueling process, but it's a process that writers are addicted to in some weird, strange, twisted way. You know, it's crazy. It is really crazy. So to hear you say that, you know, it is so true.
It is. It's beautiful, and it's tough, and it's agonizing. And you know, I get up in the mornings now and I read a chapter of my own book, because you know, it's just I don't know if it's a reminder or just something to just, you know, I know what I was feeling when I wrote it. I know what was going through me at that moment. You know, the world impacts the writing and what you're feeling, and whether you're in love that day or whether you're not in love that day, or whether you are, you know, angry or frustrated. You all that comes out of you in the pen. And so, you know, but I love this experience. I wouldn't take it for anything. I think, you know, I promised myself I would write 5 books in my lifetime. I've written 2, And that second one was so hard, I just didn't know if it was
Yeah.
going to come out of me. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep writing, and I write for a living. I have a PR firm, and so I write for my clients, and
Hmm.
it's beautiful. I sit on the
Yeah.
floor next to my bed and I write.
Oh
I
yeah.
was writing for a Christian magazine for a very long time, and
Hmm.
man, you talking about going through something and then being able to write an article for a Christian magazine and just dump
Oh yeah.
everything I'm feeling into
Yes.
it.
Hmm.
It has been it has helped me through some of the worst times of my life. And so I
Yeah.
think that this is great. But final question is
Hmm.
just with what's going on in this world right now.
Mm.
And it's so tough. I
Mm.
asked everybody on the BWW page to write a word that kind of describe what they're feeling about what's happening
Yeah.
with this senseless murder. And the words are just it's devastation, it's anger, it's tragic. It's so many pain driven words, but the word
Yeah.
we've got to get to is hope. We've got to, because
Good word.
if we don't, this, pain will drag you down to nothing.
Yes.
Um, and it really will.
Hmm.
Worry and pain, and we've got COVID-19 and so many African Americans that are dying. We've lost friends,
Hmm.
and it's been very painful, especially here in New Orleans. And then now we've got this. Now we've got rioting. It was rioting all over Birmingham last night. I'm calling
Yeah.
family, calling friends to make sure everybody's
Yep.
okay.
Same here. Same here.
So how do we get to hope? I
Mm.
mean, tell me. I mean, you did a fantastic job of laying it all out in this amazing book.
Thank you.
Tell us, how do we get to hope in your opinion?
So that's the million dollar question, in this season that we're living in, because it is so much despair. Um, if you read the news, watch the news, contacted in any way or touched in any way with today's headlines, you realize how dismal it is just across the landscape of this world, period. We're living in some very dark times. But if I were to really try to sum up where we are and what we're experiencing, and how to get back to that place of hope, I would have to start with the source of hope. And the source of hope, of course, is God. And, as a Black man during this time, I understand the frustration with not just Black men, but just our demographic as a whole. I understand the frustration when you start to kind of talk about faith in God and just what other people consider religion, because religion has failed us. Church has failed us. And for so long, we have depended on that institution to bring us hope and to be the beacon, and it has gone dark and it has gone silent. A lot of our leaders don't know what to say during this time. So it's very difficult to really find and grasp hope. Um, so one of the things I'll say, and this is a two-part answer. The first part I want to deal, with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor, and all of our dear brothers and sisters who have died, at the hands of, whether it is racist cops or just, freak accident that happened, or whatever you want to call that, or just, redneck vigilantes, whoever the case may be. It's for me, and I was having this talk with my pastor just last week. As a people, we have to learn how to allow ourselves to feel. And I think that's the first step. As an individual, we have to allow ourselves to contact what we're feeling and to draw it out. Because especially as men, as an individual, I tend to bury things in order to keep functioning. because for me, it's very inconvenient to really express and draw out and feel feelings, So for me, I think that's the first step. We really have to allow ourselves to feel whatever that is, whether that's anger, whether that's rage, whether it's confusion, whatever that is, we have to allow ourselves to feel, and we have to connect with other people to express, those feelings. I think that's the first step in healing our own individual, lives. And then from there, once we're healed and once we are at a place where we're whole enough, that's when I really feel like we need to start focusing on our community and our surroundings and just the people that are around us and outside of us. Right now, what we're seeing with the looting and the rioting, those things are just expressions of rage that are so destructive, until we're not really realizing that what we're doing today, we're going to have to really pay for, down the road eventually. So it's really not a constructive expression of those feelings. I really do have my own philosophy about, what our community kind of really needs to do to gain solidarity and to be a cohesive unit and a united front. But it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. And it's really going to take a mindset from everyone, from leadership all the way down to the laity. We have to understand the mindset behind the struggle. So that's the first thing. The next thing I have to kind of say from the perspective of COVID-19, excuse me, and just really kind of speak from more of an individual perspective. This is a time where I think, the tale of two cities, this is the best of times, this is the worst of times, I think we're living in a little bit of both. And it all depends on your perspective and how you see it. First of all, this time of isolation or quarantine, I really feel like it is a moment and an opportunity for us to really reinvent ourselves and who we are. Mm-hmm. And that to me is one of the most important things that we really need to be focusing on right now. Who do we want to be when we come out of this? We've been in quarantine now for, 2 months, a little bit over 2 months now, technically coming up to 3, mm-hmm. depending on when you actually started sheltering in place. I think that literally is, according to some experts, enough time to build a new habit. It's enough time to build a new skill. And whatever that looks like, we've had so much opportunity in this time of quarantine, isolation, sheltering in place to really sit still, to really examine who we are and to figure out, is this who I want to be on the other side of this situation, on the other side of this pandemic? I have an opportunity now to become whoever I really want to be. And yes, everyone's experience is different, and my heart goes out to the people who have lost jobs and, who, have lost income and who've lost family members. My heart goes out to all of them. But even in the midst of all of that, I think this time is affording us an opportunity to really sit down and be still and take a look at us and determine, are we good with that? Mm-hmm. Are we really good with that? And if we're not, if we're one of the ones that makes the decision or that comes to the conclusion that we're not good with that, I think this is the prime opportunity for us to really start making steps to improving who we are and becoming the person that we were destined to really be, So that's a message of hope.
Yeah. I love it. Perfect. I'm going to let your words be the final words. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for coming on. Your insight is on, it's on point. It really is. And I hope that, people will see this and hear it and understand more of the fact that, you know, it is what I wrote a poem lately called The Reset. We have an opportunity to
Yes.
reset a lot of things in our lives. And I hope that we all will take this opportunity instead of just seeing it as a negative time, but there is a lot of positivity that we can pull from this. We can grow in this. God is trying to show us something. He really
Yes.
is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to open our eyes and our hearts and everything else and just make sure that we are paying attention.
Yeah.
Because he's speaking to us. So we need to pay attention. So
Yeah.
Brian, again.
Well said. Well said.
Great book.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me on and doing this. Again, you're amazing. You know, I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And if you're interested in purchasing his book and you're on the BWW page, go to the BWW promotion book topic, click the topic, and you will find several posts that will list Brian's author page, his website. You can go directly to him and you can purchase his book, or you're on Amazon, or is that correct? Okay, you can always find the book on Amazon. And but if you're not a member of BWW, please join us. We are just a community of Black writers, Black readers. We're just here to talk about the written word. We talk about everything. We talk about editing, and then we'll talk about what's happening, current events. We talk about a little bit of everything, but it's all about giving us a platform that we can promote our work and inspire other writers, as well as be inspired by those avid readers out there that are there to support us, and we do thank them for that. So Brian, thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great week, and it's just so good to reconnect. So you know, you take care. Okay.
You too. Stay safe. All right.
Okay, will do.
God bless.